In the opening scene, we see Dan Delaney and Franny Winters coming out of a courthouse excited because they have successfully gotten married. They are excited for this new chapter of their life. As Dan shouts how much he loves her, Franny just keeps jumping on him and clinging to him. They head to a mall where they get bottles of wine to celebrate, and they start drinking it in the car on their way home. At home, they perform their marital duties. While they lay on the bed, Dan utters the word wife, making Franny feel shy, telling him to stop, but he just goes on and on. She gives in, calling him husband too, and they kiss again, rolling on the bed. The next day, Dan calls home with Franny beside him and Franny's parents in front of them. He informs his mother that he got married. This makes his mom as excited. On the other hand, Franny's parents seem to be disappointed, especially her mom. Her dad doesn't care since they've already gotten married, and they can't do anything about it. Dan's mother invites them to her house, but the reception is interrupted. Dan excuses himself to get better reception, leaving Franny with her parents. Not wanting to deal with her mom, she heads to the kitchen for coffee, but her mother follows her. She's worried about how they'll make money because they're both jobless. However, Franny reminds her that she's a writer, while Dan is an actor. She rejects the money her mom tries to give them, and her mom leaves her, wishing that they at least invited them for the wedding. Danny comes back, unaware of the atmosphere as he shows his mom the kitchen. In the next scene, Dan and Franny arrive home, and Dan struggles to open the garage. He eventually gets it open, and they head inside still in the honeymoon stage, with Dan clinging to her. That night, Dan and Franny throw a late party with their friends. Maya makes a joke about getting married too, so that they'll become loaded. Dan and Franny kiss each other, making their friends go wild as they watch how cute they are, exclaiming that marriage is beautiful. Later into the night, Franny, Cheyenne, and Maya are still outside. Cheyenne talks about how she was the wildest one because she was always the one who did something first, mentioning how she kissed a boy first, and other stuff like that. As they talk, they're reminded of the stupid things they did when they were little. Suddenly, Cheyenne realizes that marriage is a big deal. So, she suggests that Franny throw a party for it, but Franny brushes it off, since a wedding celebration is not their thing. Even as Maya tries to enjoy and encourage her, Franny doesn't budge. They wonder how her mother took it, and when she tells them that she flipped out, they're not surprised. They tease her, having fun as they drink and talk the rest of the night. That night, as Dan and Franny are watching a movie on his laptop, the laptop shows signs of being faulty. Despite their not-so-good financial state, Danny needs to get a new one. The next morning while brushing together, Franny curses as she reveals that she didn't get the job she applied for. Dan, on the other hand, gets a job as a dog walker, and Haley, his boss, shows him the place. He's shocked when he finds out that she owns the place. When she asks if it's too much, he admits that she deserves it since she worked hard for it. She wonders if he enjoys his job as a dog walker, and Dan jokes that he's actually terrified of dogs. Eventually, he assures her that he's joking, since it wouldn't make sense that he'll be a dog walker if he hates dogs. Dan gets home, happy to see Franny, and kisses her while she arranges their house. He informs her that he got a job from Haley Turner, a famous actress. When Franny misunderstands that he is to act with her, he clarifies that the job is to babysit her dogs for 6 months while she's away. He assures her that they have a large and beautiful place, with a pool to stay in for the next 6 months. Although Franny is disappointed, she is glad that they have a suitable place for a proper wedding party. Dan takes Franny to the house, and when she sees it, she loves it. She's delighted that Dan landed the job, and they check out the master bedroom. Later, Dan is in the pool enjoying his alone time, when Franny disturbs him. She breaks the good news that she got a job as a writer in a game show. Dan shouts in celebration, carrying her in his arms, and screaming that she's the smartest woman in the world. Franny feels a little insecure, wondering if she'll do well, but Dan assures her that she's the best and will do well. Later, they go into the house to get down and dirty. In the next scene, Franny is seated at the reception of the game show office, waiting for someone, and eventually, the boss arrives. As she's shown to her table, she admits that she's excited to be in the company, because she has always wanted to write for television. Unfortunately, he bursts her bubbles by pointing out that what they do is a form of art. This disappoints Franny, but she still maintains the facade of being excited. The man who has been leading her sees the ring on her hand and sighs before leaving. Then, Franny goes to her desk. While she's there, one of her coworkers sits on her desk, trying to find out what she did or said wrong, because their boss is sulking, and it's a bad sign. Franny turns to see their boss, removing his shoe. The man asks her if their boss found out that he couldn't sleep with her. She's shocked when he explains that their boss is a narcissist who thinks he's the king of all men, and is probably angry because she is married. The whole conversation is confusing to her because she doesn't even know who she's talking to. She practically drives him off, saying she's busy. Franny eventually finds out from someone that the person she was talking to was Noah Beringer, the head writer. Franny sighs, already exhausted with the first 2 people she just met. At home, Franny is working on writing a script, but Dan wants to play with her. He tries his best to get her to swim with him, but unfortunately, she's too busy. At work the next day, Franny is busy working when Gavin and Noah come out of their office. Gavin picks some people to work on set, leaving Franny out. Noah then asks how her work is going. Franny, who does not want to deal with him, answers coldly that it's going fine. Unfortunately, her cold answer backfires as Noah sits beside her, asking what he did wrong. He notices the work she's doing is tough, but Franny assures him that she's okay with it. He offers to put in a word for her so she can get down to the stage and help production, but Franny refuses, claiming she's okay with what she's doing. He invites her to their Thursday tradition of drinks before leaving, but Franny clarifies that she can't make it. He comes back again, giving her a pointer that Gavin loves adjectives, and that if she infuses it into her work, he'll think she's a genius. Franny agrees, but only because she wants him to get out of her sight. At home, Franny pours out her frustrations about Noah to Dan, ranting about how everyone thinks he is fine, adding how Noah thinks he's the best in the world while pointing out other people's flaws. Franny asks for Dan's opinion on what to do, but he doesn't know, advising that she should just ignore him. They get back to what they were doing before, but Franny gets distracted calling out the potential baby names that Dan had been writing, and laughing at the suggestions. Dan is unhappy and tells her to stop laughing, so that they can get serious. Later, Franny breaks into laughter again, so Dan walks out annoyed that she's not taking it seriously. The next day, Franny leaves early for work. While at work, she hands Gavin the intro he asked her to write. He tells her to read it, and she does, emphasizing the adjectives Noah advised her to use. Gavin loves the introduction. When she tries to leave, Gavin instructs her to stay on set, which pleases Franny. They hand her the headset, and Franny laughs as she listens to the show. Franny shows up for the Thursday night work drinks. She looks for her coworkers but doesn't find them. As she's about to leave, she sees Noah, who informs her that everyone else bailed, but he's happy that she showed up. He asks her to buy him a drink and Franny rolls her eyes. He then goes to sit at the bar asking what she wants. During this interaction, they get to know each other more. Noah wants to know if she liked the show earlier, even though Gavin has been annoying. She admits that she enjoyed that day, revealing that she wants to have her show one day. Noah believes that she will. They have fun at the bar, and Franny laughs a lot because Noah is funny. Meanwhile, at home, Dan masturbates to while drinking. He mistakenly stains one of Haley's books and starts reading it, even though he knows it's her diary. Franny and Noah have left the bar and are a little tipsy. Franny laughs when she finds out that Noah was once a playwright from New York. She thinks that his work sucked, but they were good, since they even got good reviews. Later, Franny and Noah procure some food. At home, Dan discovers that Haley Turner, his boss, is a lonely person. He finds a video of her and starts masturbating to it. Noah and Franny end up at an expensive restaurant, and Franny is shocked at the price of the items on the menu. Noah shakes his head because she reminds him of a younger version of himself, who was always afraid to take what he got, even though that was all he wanted. Franny's face sobers up. He stops talking as he gets a message from his wife and has to answer. Franny is surprised that he's married. They both talk about their spouses and enjoy themselves. After the restaurant, Noah suggests that they go elsewhere, but Franny has to go home. While she is driving, Noah is driving behind her. Franny imagines them coming out of their cars and kissing. She curses herself for her imagination. The next day, Franny wakes up in their house to her phone vibrating. She gets a call from Dan, who's been worried sick about her because she didn't get back to Haley's house again. She apologizes as she was drunk and went to their real house instead. He reprimands her, telling her to call him next time instead of texting him like she said she did. Dan tries to find out who she was with the previous night, but as he's on a hill, walking the dogs, the reception is bad and he can't hear her. In the next scene, at Cheyenne's workplace, Franny tells her about her frustrations and Cheyenne wonders if she's freaking out because she has a crush. Franny doesn't want to think about it, since all her love is meant to be channeled to Dan. Cheyenne has to get back to work, but she is stopped by Franny, who tells her that she has a fantasy about Noah. Cheyenne explains that it's normal because she's a human. She convinces her that Noah is not special before she leaves, and Franny is grateful for her help. It's Christmas season. Dan and Franny are at home together as they put on the Christmas lights at Haley's house. Franny claims she has a present for Dan, who's surprised when she puts on some old tunes and starts dancing. He loves the way she dances and kisses him, all the while wishing him a Merry Christmas and apologizing for anything she has ever done. Dan, who kisses her back, wonders why she's apologizing, because she hasn't done anything to hurt him. The next day, Franny wakes up to Dan's kisses, and he asks if she wants to continue the intercourse. She suddenly springs up on the bed as she remembers that they had made love without protection the previous day. She has to run to the since she doesn't want to get pregnant. Dan tries his best to calm her down because he believes even if she's pregnant, they'll have to discuss it. He admits that he wants to have children soon, but Franny is concerned as she never knew that he wanted to have children so soon. She admits that she doesn't want children now, and due to these newly revealed differences, they almost get into an argument. She wonders why they're fighting, because she's not going to have kids anytime soon. When Dan asks what she wants, she claims she doesn't want to fight. Franny heads to work, throwing out the fake Christmas tree and leaving Dan at home. Meanwhile, Dan calls Haley, asking if her dog Pablo is allowed on the couch. At work, Noah informs a less busy Franny that Gavin wants her to run a set, and she's both surprised and excited. At home, Dan is having a video call with Haley, who's surprised at what her dogs are doing. Franny gets home, and Haley has to go because she has a scene to shoot. Dan thinks she looks cute in her dress. Franny jumps on the bed asking Dan how his day went, but Dan doesn't look interested. He lies about just having walked the dogs and having a normal day. Franny goes on about how she and Noah had to rewrite their script, and how he always takes in Gavin's nonsense and ignores her. Sensing something is wrong, Franny tries to find out what it is, and Dan explains that he has never met any of her colleagues yet, even though she talks about them all the time. Franny doesn't take him seriously, making Dan annoyed. She then decides to invite Noah and his wife, Sally, for dinner. Dan is okay with the decision, but he still doesn't seem happy. It appears their differences in having children is still on his mind. In the next scene, Noah and Sally arrive for dinner at their house, and Noah is shocked at the beauty of the house. He introduces Sally, and Franny introduces Dan. As Dan and Sally head to their seats, Noah secretly compliments Franny that she smells great, which surprises her. While Franny serves the drinks, Sally talks about how romantic Noah was on the day of their wedding, and how he tried to calm her down when the lights went out. Franny jokes that Dan should take pointers for their wedding. Sally is confused, since they're married already. Franny explains that they haven't had a wedding party yet and will have it soon. Dan, who's in a prickly mood, says that they might never have it and the atmosphere becomes awkward. Franny quickly covers it up, saying that the wedding will be in March, and Dan agrees, somewhat sarcastically. When Noah asks about Dan's job, he admits that he's a dog walker. He claims that he can't be an actor since the last time he was paid to act was 2 years ago. His response makes the atmosphere awkward again. This time, Sally breaks the awkwardness by talking about her job. During dinner, Franny apologizes for the fish, but they don't hold it against her. Dan feels left out while they laugh and he heads inside. However, Franny asks him to get more wine. Dan is a little drunk and comes back with some leftover chicken, proceeding to hand it to everyone. Franny takes some, trying to hide her embarrassment. She also kisses Dan to distract him. Their kiss gets too intense and uncomfortable, so Sally grabs some of the food, while Noah just looks at Dan like a fool. In the next scene, while Franny and Noah are reading Haley's diary and praising her for her penmanship, Dan angrily collects it from them. He drunkenly demands them to respect their job and Haley's property. Annoyed, he leaves to walk the dogs. Franny smokes away her sadness, while Noah and Sally dance to a beautiful song. Later, Franny tipsily walks into a room and sees Noah reading a book. He explains that he was looking for the bathroom when he came across the book, praising her poetry. Noticing that something is wrong with her, he asks what it is. Franny admits feeling like everything is hard. This prompts him to read the poem to her. He presses himself on her but steps back after a while, mentioning that Dan doesn't know how lucky he is. He leaves, bidding her goodnight and telling her that he and his wife will let themselves out. Franny is left alone in the house. She thinks for a while before grabbing her car keys and heading out. She ends up in front of Noah's house and she texts him. He comes out, enters his car, and she follows behind him. While they're driving, she hits the rear of his car, so Noah comes out furious. He's surprised to see the drunken Franny, wondering why she texted him urgently. As she tries to explain, she changes her mind, kissing him instead. She suggests they go to her apartment, but Noah takes her to the back of his car instead, and they commit infidelity. Later, he asks her to text him when she gets home before leaving. Franny breathes heavily as she thinks about what she has done. At home, she sits on the stairs drinking and waiting for Dan to come home. Dan comes home still drunk and is surprised to see her at the stairs. She admits that the night didn't go well and he apologizes as it was his fault kissing her. She tries to find out what his problem with the diary is, but he claims it's nothing. He then asks her what's with her and Noah. She also says nothing. She starts crying and Dan comforts her. They apologize to each other and confess their love while they kiss, and later make love. The next day, Dan throws up due to his hangover. In her car, Franny takes emergency contraception before heading to work. At work, she stops at Noah's desk wanting to talk about the previous night, but Noah just waves her off as he has something to do, promising that they'll talk later before leaving. Back at Haley's home, Dan sets everything up because Haley is meant to come back that day. He waits till evening, but she still hasn't come home. Another woman enters the house though, and she's shocked when she sees him. He informs her that he's the dog sitter and she reveals that she's also one, informing him that he's being replaced. He leaves immediately, informing her that he already fed the dogs and gave Pablo his eye drops. The next morning, Franny and Dan are preparing their wedding cards when suddenly, she asks him if he's happy. Dan claims he is, though it sounds faint and not convincing enough. In the next scene, Franny looks through her wardrobe for a dress to wear. She shows up dressed up in the living room, while Dan plays video games on the TV. She says she loves him and he replies the same, but not even turning his head to look at her. It seems like the spark is gone. Their honeymoon stage is over. At the club, Franny is drinking and dancing with her friends, Cheyenne and Maya, but not feeling excited. She is just drunk. Even as Maya crowns her with a tiara, she just shouts with her friends, smiling with them, but continues drinking heavily. They head to a strip club where they watch the dancers. Franny is so drunk that she kisses a woman. Later, she throws up in the toilet and one of the strippers tells her to go home, but she drunkenly says that she doesn't want to. Franny goes to her parents' house this time. She sleeps on her parents' bed and her mother, Joanne, holds her in her sleep. The next morning, Joanne prepares a hangover meal for her, while she looks at her daughter with pity. Franny claims she's fine when she looks at her mother, but her eyes betray her and she starts crying. As she tries to give an excuse for her emotions, her mother tells her to calm down. She believes that the first year of marriage is hard, and that it will get better as time goes on. But her mom tells her the truth that it only gets harder. Franny feels stupid and sad, so Joanne hugs her, comforting her. Later, Dan and Franny start growing apart, and even at their wedding party, they don't seem to want to be together. They step aside to talk, and they admit that they are really bad for each other. When Cheyenne calls them to the stage, Dan speaks both their minds. They thank everyone for coming and admit that they don't want to be married anymore because they tried their best but it didn't work. Dan kisses her before leaving, while Franny wipes her tears before leaving too.